Hello, you're listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better, and each episode I'll be talking to my guests about their epiphanies, their inspirations, and the magic of their workflow. And I'm here today with Taseer Ahmad. How are you, Taz?
Really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what your thing is?
It's interesting. Like if you had asked me this question before the pandemic, I would have thought a bit about it, but we have done these introductions on so many calls that it just comes naturally. So in terms of business, I'm in digital marketing. I manage the operations of Axies Digital. We used to be marketing voice until a few months ago. Before I started this business with my business partner 3 years ago, I was an academic. Technically, I'm still an academic because I was, even in this financial year, even in this academic year that we spent teaching online, I was still teaching in the university. I was teaching at De Montfort University. And this year, I only taught financial management and contemporary management. Before that, I have taught operations and management philosophy. So I'm a bit of an academic who has worked in the industry, who has ended up in starting his own business 3 years ago. So that's that's me. Yes, that's me.
And the other aspect to you, or do you want to talk a little bit about Volta Blue as well, which is how we met?
That's one of those things where even though we are a digital marketing business, we have always believed that the backbone of a business is the relationships that you can build, the true relationships you can build. I'm not talking about relationships which are just based on you give me money and I give you money. Those are different kind of relationships, but even professional relationships need to have a bit more than that. So Volta Blue was just a way to maintain those relationships, to build those relationships once the pandemic hit. What we wanted to do was bring businesses together because we knew that if people have issues, everyone has issues in business. We have seen that. We have our own issues in business, but we have seen that if you can bring people together with different skill sets, with different experiences, they can help each other. So when the pandemic hit and we said, okay, let's bring people together, we did not want to be another, networking group which just brings people together and I do this and you do that. How can we work together? We realized let's put a format. Let's put a format where you can get the value out of people rather than just people trying to sell. So Volta Blue is basically, it started as a mastermind community. Mastermind is when people come together and discuss challenges, try to solve each other's challenges. That's what mastermind is. It's not new. It has been there for hundreds of years. There are paid for communities. There are people who get together physically and run them. So that's what Volta Blue is. We started off in April 2019. So that was maybe a month after we went into lockdown. We started going really quickly. So the idea was that we will get about 40 people and that will be the end of it. We were on 80 people in the first week. We were on 160 people in the second week. Well, okay, now we need to maintain this a bit and manage this a bit. So we became a bit more specific and we ended up even now we are going with it. It's more than 1,000 businesses who are members. It's all free. We don't charge anyone. We believe that you shouldn't pay to make friends. Let's put it this way. And it has then spun into a magazine which has had its own now digital prints and everything. Again, it's all free. It doesn't make us any money. We spend money on it from our own company at this point. But it's one of those things where we have seen value. We have built relationships. We have known people that we would have never known. So yeah, that's what Volta Blue is.
And it's a fantastic community. I come along most months and see faces that I've seen before and faces that, new faces. And it's as you say, it's constantly growing and the people in there are just so generous with their time and their expertise. Yeah, it's a fabulous thing you built there. And I think it does feel like a genuine community that you've built.
Yep, that was always the aim, isn't it? You can tell so much about the community on the basis of how it makes people feel. Because even though people will say, I am busy or I am doing other things, people will go away for a month or two. I have never said to people that if you want to be a member, you have to come every month. There are people who go away for 3 months. There are people who go on holidays. There are people who, get busy in other things and they come back a couple of months late. And even now when people are doing less video calls, we are still going on with the Volta Blue. At one point, we were doing a session a day. So that was at the peak of the pandemic when there was no other form of networking and people were really loving it. And now when we are seeing a bit of a 50-50 between, physical meetings and, digital meetings, the community is still going. The magazine is still going. Actually, the magazine is becoming bigger now that we can meet people and, things like that. So you never know where things go as long as you set the right values. And the value was, let's put people together who can share value and who believe in sharing value. Everything else just, follows afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been I've met a lot of really interesting people through that. So yeah, thank you so much for setting it up. And so let's get on with this. You ready to dive into do yourself a favor?
Yeah, why not? Let's go.
Let's go for it. So what I'd be interested to hear from you first, Taz, is what's something that you wished you'd learned sooner?
Funny enough, we just talked about it. I wish I had learned sooner if I build a relationship, how to nourish it. Mm-hmm. Because what happened is my success came, if you look at it academically or if you look at it professionally, it came quite early, and I took it a bit for granted. Let's put it this way. So I studied aeronautical engineering at University of Glasgow. And the thing is, if you go to a university like University of Glasgow, it shields you from the world a bit because it's one of the, I think it's the fourth oldest or the third oldest English-speaking university in the world. So after Oxford and Cambridge, it is, I think, the third oldest English-speaking university in the world. So when you go to a university like that, you're a bit shielded because if you need funding, you get funding. If you need sponsorships for a project, you'll get sponsorship. If you need facilities, you will get facilities. So for example, we started an aerospace society. Even now, we started that aerospace society in 2013 or 2014. And that society even exists today, even though I'm not there and like we are all not there. And that society still sends people to America every year for a competition. We get the funding. They all get sent to Florida. They have their own fun. We had sponsorship from Red Bull. We had sponsorship from Iron Brew. You start thinking that this is how the world works. You think that because I'm in this kind of an environment, like we will get money if we need money. We are doing these interesting projects. We are doing a project with NASA and like whatever. So the success came so easily in that kind of environment that when I came out of it, so when I graduated, I was headhunted by a Spanish company and I became a program manager. That's another thing you don't hear with a lot of graduates. You don't just become a manager or something. I became a program and I thought this is how life is going to be because you make a few connections. I had connections with, I'm not going to name the companies now because it's very easy to track those people afterwards because those are director level people. I realized that even if I built relationships with those people, I needed to have ways to nourish it because once you are taken out of that system, it's so hard to go back in and then, do something about it. Mm-hmm. So I only spent a year in the Spanish company. And the idea was that I'm going to go away because my contract ended and I'm going to renegotiate and they're going to send me to a different country. That never happened because I was not in the system again, mm-hmm. which ended up being 6 months of me thinking, what do I want to do next? So imagine I was already a manager in the university. I was a program manager in the Aerospace Society. I was working with projects with NASA and American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, things like that. At 23, I was a program manager in a company with more than 40,000 people and operations in 30 countries. And then 6 months of me, literally, I was like, okay, what do I do next? Because the relationships that I had were in Spain and were in Scotland, and I'm not there anymore. Mm-hmm. How do I nourish these things? So if I had learned this very quickly, and I've learned this, that was one of the things with Volta Blue. How do you build relationships? You make it consistent. If you had just did one mastermind with you and I, and then I'd never seen you in 6 months, we would not be sitting here now. So no. That's one thing I should have learned very quickly, and I did learn afterwards. One thing that the world doesn't work always work the way I was working it when I was younger. And another, I need to nourish the relationships that I built. Otherwise, it just goes away.
It's that subject of networking, I guess, is something that comes up quite a lot. And what is networking from a perspective? And really, when it works, it's about building close and sustainable and meaningful relationships. Yeah. And it's not about diving in and trying to sell somebody something. And one of the best pieces of advice I got around networking in general, like quite early on when I had my first attempt at going out on my own, was, give your network what it needs rather than trying to take what you need from your network. And that's kind of, it's the spirit behind Volta Blue, it's giving your expertise and your time, but it's also when it's the way that you then build trust and capital with people, is that you can give your give your knowledge, you give your expertise, you give your time, you give your attention, and that's, if you do it sincerely, then people remember that, and then eventually, in some way or another, that comes back round because you're part of a community, and that's how they work.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where we realized very early on that when people come to a group, like, you would think, if someone has, let's say, we had one lady who had 600 employees. If someone had 600 employees, what is she getting out of Volta Blue? If someone has 20 something employees, what are they getting out of Volta Blue? It's not the money that they need out of Volta Blue. You realize that very quickly, because 80%, 90% of the people were very small businesses, less than 5 employees, or working on their own. Then you start realizing that it's not just about what business I can get. And the people who try to do that in a network, they get kicked out very quickly, or they end up building networks which are self-fulfilling, where everyone is like them. And those are not really the relationships that you want to build. Those are just people, people think, oh, in business, I need to network, tick. Oh, I need to go and get sales, tick. These are not ticks, that's an oversimplification of how a business should be, how value is generated, how relationships are built. How do you trust someone? How do you want to spend your time? What do you want to do in your life? Those are oversimplifications in business. And the quicker people learn it, the better they do. And the good thing is, in Volta Blue, we got people who have learned that thing. Otherwise, they will just go away and not come back.
Yeah, it's quite the way that Volta Blue works is quite self-selecting from that perspective, isn't it? Because it's more about giving value than it is about getting leads. So the next question in the podcast is, it's kind of about turning points. It's kind of about things something that you learned or something that you read. So sometimes started as a book, it's evolved beyond a book, but is there a book or a concept that resonated with you at a point in your life that kind of changed the direction you took or changed the way you thought about things?
So that's an interesting question. And I didn't even, funny enough, before you asked this question, I didn't even think about this, but the moment you said the question, the first book that came to my mind, I'm going to just mention that book. And I need to look at the author. That's the beauty of internet. I can literally check now, and I'm thinking, well, how can I forget? From Edward Freeman, yeah, of course. The first book that I read on strategic management. Okay. Because the thing is, I was an engineer. I was already an engineer. And I was already, basically, the Spanish company who had hunted me, they put me through a master's degree in industrial management. And, we keep hearing this word strategic management, and people don't even realize that the term strategic management did not even exist before the 80s, 1980s, and I'm born in the 90s. So it's not even that old as a concept. But now you see people, even if you meet accountants, they will say strategic management. Even if you meet, you meet anyone, they use the word strategic management because they don't really know what is strategic management. The first book that I read on strategic management is from Freeman. I think he quoted the term strategic management. And I started seeing processes in a different way. It was one of those things where, there has to be a reason why you do something. There has to be a meaning behind why you are doing something. You don't have to say it in words. It just needs to drive you. If you don't have that driver of doing things in business, then what's the point? You could be banging your head against a wall. To put a dent in the wall, you can bang your head into it. But that's not how you should do it, isn't it? So that was one of those instances where I started reading the first book on strategic management from Freeman, and I read one chapter, and I'm like, okay, let me read that again. So I read that again, and I was like, okay, this actually makes so much sense. It's like this guy is talking to me. Because until then, like I said, it's a bit of those things where when you come from an engineering background, you look at things as numbers. You look at things as this happens, this happens, this happens. Yeah, this has happened. This is going to happen. This is the kind of mentality we have. And this is the reason why a lot of people who study, for example, aeronautical engineering, they go into finance because they think that finance works that way as well. They think that, you invest in these places and you do these things and you put this equation and it's going to give you the things. Then you go and study a bit more. And I think it's one of those, like I said, it's one of those moments when you realize, okay, if I'm doing this thing, why am I doing it? What value is it going to create? What can we do with it in the future? It annoys me a lot when people use strategic management as a buzzword because they don't know what it means. And they've just learned it because it will make them get more money. But then the thing is, it's one of those things where we are talking about strategic management. And um, there was a lot of application of lean management. And in lean management, we talk a lot about, value and people and things like that. But then strategy takes it one step behind. And that's what I've learned. If I can take something one step behind, it just improves my understanding of, that concept or that operation or that relationship or my management of the team or the people that I'm talking to. Can I take it one step back?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do with that information? That's the book. That was a turning point, which changed my mentality a bit.
Okay, so really starting to understand the purpose behind and what difference did that make practically to things that you did after that point, once you realized that finding the purpose was the way forward?
Yeah, interestingly, I still remember this like now when I think about it again, because at that point I was living in Madrid. It was a bit funny because I started talking to people differently. It's like I started looking at them. I think I started looking at them a bit differently, and it might have made them a bit. I think I took it a bit too seriously initially because it needs to become natural.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is talking and I'm looking at them in a weird way, I think they will start thinking, what is wrong with this guy? But it's one of those things where you get inspired by something so much that you start applying it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, this is what happened. I took it too seriously. What would end up happening is I would start observing. In a way, it helped. I would start observing how the Spanish people, when they are together, how do they talk? Because you will see a big difference between a Spanish person speaking in Spanish to a Spanish person speaking in English to a Spanish
Mm-hmm.
person speaking in German, which is very common if you're working in the auto sector. A lot of them speak German. It's like their whole personality changes with the kind of people that they're talking to. So those are the kind of things I started picking. I think now it comes naturally. Now I can go to a meeting, I can have a conversation, and it has kind of helped us in business as well. Like if I have a conversation with someone, I can tell you with quite a bit of certainty if we are going to do anything together afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is, we are in Britain, people are very polite. No one's going to tell you on the face that it's not going to happen. No one's going to, like, you can have a meeting, you can go and meet someone, you can discuss business and everything. It has helped me understand what is going to happen next.
Okay.
And even if someone is enthusiastic, I know I kind of understand when is the enthusiasm going to fall off, because that happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a meeting with someone and it's like, oh, it's done. Like, this is going to happen. And then you realize, okay, it's not going to happen. Now, if someone is too enthusiastic about something, I take a step back from it and I'm like, okay, let's give it some time, because otherwise this is going to burn very quickly as well. And that's again based on the experiences that we have had. If someone comes too enthusiastic, it burns off very quickly. If someone doesn't show any enthusiasm, there is no point in doing anything afterwards. It's one of those things as well. Like you start picking your battles on the basis of your interactions, or why are people doing what they are doing? What would they want to do? What do they want to achieve? Is that matching what you are giving them?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the mentality which has come in. That is not just what is in the front. It's think about everything which is surrounding it as well.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm just thinking about some of my experiences, and I think aligning on values is really, really important when you're getting into any kind of collaboration. But then also but I don't think it's the only thing that you can rely on, because you also need to have a bit of a sense of the personality types within. So for example, I tend to need to have in a relationship, any kind of working relationship, somebody who's more detail focused and more kind of action driven than I am, because I will go big on the ideas. I get very, very excited about the next thing whilst having not finished the thing I'm doing now. And so I think you've got to be aligned on vision and values, otherwise it's a non-starter. But then all the other things like skill set and personality types kind of come into play. But you can't start from skill sets and have it succeed. You have to be aligned on that why up front, I think.
Yeah. It's one of those interesting things where, so my business partner Hamid, he is a bit like you. He's a bit more ideas driven. He gets excited by new things. He wants to, learn. He wants to learn the new technology. He wants to apply the new technology. He will get excited with people, and he will say, "Oh, I have an amazing idea." Like they will start talking about something, and he will literally say, "I have an amazing idea that I can share with you," and things like that. And then I'm a bit more detailed. I break down things. I do this naturally. Like if you give me something, if you give me, it's one of those things, people keep using this. If you look at a lot of trees in a place, do you see trees or do you see a forest? I see trees. It's one of those things, like everyone uses it. So it's one of those things where if you say to me, how will you study a tree? I will say, okay, you look at the leaves, they are there to absorb the light. You look at the roots, they are absorbing the water. The water is coming from here. The light is coming from here. So I will not look at the tree. I will look at the components of it. And I do that naturally. I learned, funny enough, I only learned this a couple of years ago that I'm that kind. And no one had made me think about it. Like, are you a detailed person or are you an ideas person? I'm not a creative person. I know that, creative by the sense of, artistic creation or, I'm the guy that you give an idea and I can tell you if it's going to work or not. How can we make it work? What can we do to make it succeed? So that's what I do in business as well. I take ideas and I usually take someone else's idea and I improve it. And I'm very comfortable with it.
And there's something, but that sort of explains as well why the idea of strategic management and understanding purpose and why was such an epiphany for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Because if that's how your mind naturally works and you're into the weeds and into the detail, then actually combining that preference and skill with the ability to lift your head up and just think about things from a larger perspective, that's going to feel quite surprising as a way of looking at things.
I think the thing is we are still learning about ourselves as well, isn't it? It's one of those things where if you had met me as a 16-year-old, I used to talk differently. I used to do different things in life. I actually thought I'm going to go into sports.
Okay.
And I thought I'm going to be a sports guy. When I reached, but then the thing is, there is a long story about that as well. If in a different life I would be playing cricket, it's one of those things. And even when I went to university, I thought, okay, I will be doing some sort of, something with sports because I was playing squash for the university. I come from a region in Pakistan. I was born in Pakistan. I come from the north. Squash is very popular. Okay. Cricket is very popular. Those are the sports which are very popular. So it's not like it's unheard of for us doing those things. But even when you come from sports, you need to think of the detail. It's not the end result of achieving something. It's the details. And if you are good with the details in sports, it can help you as well. So I think it's now when I think about it, I can think of these things. So even when I think that my personality was different, it was always, these components were always there. What has happened is I have become a bit more calm. I've become a bit more slower. I can take my time with things. I'm not very, let's just get on. Like I have become very calm with things. So even if someone becomes like really, in business, let's do something. I say, give it a second. Let's have a chat. Let's build a relationship. Because the speed at which you have come, this is the speed, like it's like a ball coming at you. The speed at which comes, it can go back at the same speed as well. If you hit it in the right direction, that's not what you want. You want to finesse it. You want to, time it. You want to put it in the gap, You want to get the maximum runs out of it. So it's one of those things which this is what I was doing. And this is what I'm doing in business as well.
Nice analogy. I approve.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into talking about workflow a little bit now, and I'd be interested to hear about what's something you use every day that's not your phone or your laptop, like something in your workflow or your life that you use every day that's kind of like a tool that is your dependable go-to.
That's a good question. Something I use. One thing I don't know if this qualifies. I will always, there will be a time in the day when I do nothing. Okay. So I don't need any tools. I just need to calm down and think of it. And I think, so it's one of those things, like I said, that I have become a bit more calm as I'm getting older. I used to be a very angry teenager. Let's put it this way as well. I used to be a very angry teenager. So it's one of those things where the more calm I get, there is always a time in the day when I will just stand on my standing desk, maybe sometimes with a cup of coffee, usually nothing. A cup of coffee I don't drink after, certain time because then I can't sleep. But I will have some time when I will just stand and I'm either saying something to the team or I'm saying something to Hamid or something, or I'm just thinking. So in a way, my time, like you say, how one thing that I do, some point I don't touch anything. I just stand, and it just helps me, get, collected. It just make me think about what needs to be done. What have I missed? Because I still have one of those situations where, when you have multiple notebooks and you have like a calendar and everything, and there's always something that you miss or something. Sometimes when I calm down a bit, it comes back to me that, okay, I need to do something. So basically emptiness is what what helps me. Let's put it this way.
I like that. I like that a lot. I do find it interesting, and a lot of people have talked about this over the last 8 to 10 years, that the ease of access to fast information and distraction is, and I'm generally I'm a technological optimist. I tend to not buy into the hype around, smartphones are destroying people's brains and making the world a less sociable place. I don't subscribe to that notion. But the one area where I can see that it reduces or it could reduce something, and I think it's something you need to manage, is we don't get bored anymore. We don't stop and just, unless we do it proactively, like you've described, and go, right, actually, I'm just going to give myself some empty time for my brain to just catch up and join some dots and so on. What we tend you're queuing up in the supermarket to buy your food, and you can look at your phone and just fill that little gap of idleness.
Yeah, that I was going to give you the same example that I have seen. I guess, this is so. When I go to gym, I see so many people when they are not exercising, they are on the phone, and I'm thinking this is your moment to reflect what you have been doing. Like let's say you have been deadlifting, and they would deadlift, like they will do a few deadlifts. In between my deadlifts, I would either walk, I would either jump, or I will literally sit down. I literally sit down and don't do anything because I want to get my breath, like I want to get my breathing back. I want to like feel, okay, how is my back feeling and everything. I've seen so many people who in between will pull out their phone again, and sometimes they would be even talking to someone and they would still be on their phone. That is just like, I don't know why do people, like I'm pretty sure I used to do the same thing. Like if I'm in the queue or something, I need to fill that time or something. But I think I have, like I said, even in the gym, like these are also things you need to consider. Like, why am I doing this exercise? What impact am I? Because I know my back hurts. Like if I don't take care of it, my back used to hurt. So it's one of those things where now when I exercise, those pains have gone away. And I know why have they gone away, because I've been building strength, which is so important. Like if I get on the phone and everything, then in our culture, we say that even a donkey can lift a lot of weight, but it's again, we are going towards the finesse of it. We are going towards, you put the power in the right place. You want to be a tiger rather than,
There's the quote. There's the quote that we're going to be using to advertise the episode of the podcast. You want to be a tiger, not a donkey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things there. Like when I'm in the gym and I see people, first of all, the number of people, like they are exercising. One thing is one thing. Another thing which annoys me is people who keep working on one part of their body and ignore everything else, because they are just exercising for the wrong reasons again. So it's like the people who just keep building their arms and keep building their chest, because when you take a picture, that's what you see most of the time. You see their legs and you're like, if you go out and run, you're going to break your leg. It's one of those things like that. People don't think about it. They are so influenced by what they've seen in other places. They are so influenced by this world which they've created, around us. It's so self-fulfilling. You are not actually building strength. You're just a part of, you become a part of the cog. You're just wasting your time in the gym. Like, what texting is so important? Who cannot wait, 10 minutes for your reply? But you cannot give up your phone The only time I touch my phone is if I want to change the music, because if I want to change my mood, I change my music. If I, let's change the tempo. If I'm not happy with the tempo, that's the kind of thing I would do just to get in the mood of it. And when I do, like, for example, I'm jumping, that's to like increase my heart rate, because for some things you need, blood to be pumping a bit quicker. If I'm not thinking of these things, I will not improve in what I'm doing there. And I was never a gym guy. It's one of those things as well. It's like when I talk about it now, people think I've been going to gym for years or something. Look at me, like I've never been a gym guy, for example. I joined the gym in September, and I don't give up on things. It's one of those things as well. If I start doing something, I'm not going to give it up in 2 weeks. So I've just not given up, and I just keep trying to improve. Like, you can take that mentality anywhere, because I was a runner. I used to do a lot of, at one point I used to run 12 kilometers a day, 50 minutes. I was playing squash, so I used to train for squash. I was playing cricket, you train for cricket. You do some weights and you do some running and you do some, work on your cardio and stuff, but you don't do it this way where you're like, you want strength, you want to have that strength. So I was never a gym guy or anything. I just did what exercise I needed to do the things I wanted to do, because that's what I needed to do to achieve. But now I'm in business and I see so many people who, gain too much weight, or, eat junk food, or they're eating while they're working, or, whatever things like that. Why are they doing that to yourself? So if you don't think of the details of why you're trying to do something, you can build a business and destroy your health and not enjoy that business, for example.
Also, I think the whole working from home thing over the last year and a bit has contributed to that. I mean, pre-pandemic, I used to work from home usually a day a week. I always noticed on those days, like the fitness rings on my watch and the moving rings on my watch just wouldn't fill up as much. And it wasn't to do with like exercise, specific exercise. It was just to do with the fact that, in the office, the toilet was a little bit further away. In the office, the kitchen was a little bit further away. And whereas when you're working from home, like everything's much, much closer. And so I just wasn't moving about as much. And you just have to kind of recognize that how much changes in your routine, even if they're not fundamentally, they're not things that you are doing necessarily to exercise, but if they make your life more sedentary, then there's a health risk there that you need to balance out some other way.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. So I've seen another thing as well. Even when people work from an office, they live so far away from it that the only way to reach the office is by driving there. This is a very British thing to do as well. Like, the older you get, the more you want to live out of the city, or like you want to live in the suburb, and like you want to have a house with a garden and everything. But then you come to work, you drive for half an hour, and you go back from work half an hour, and you never exercise like at all. And you just see people, it's like they're slowly giving up or something. You should never be giving. There are 90-year-olds who are still running 100 meters, races and stuff. There are people who can still, do rounds and rounds and rounds, and they are 100 years old and whatever. There's one of those things as well. You need to find ways to just move, like have a standing desk for, sometime. I have a standing desk. I don't use it all the time, but I use it for, if I'm doing the Volta Blue, if I'm hosting, I will use it. If I'm having a bit more of a conversation, then I will sit down and have a conversation. It's one of those things as well. Like, just move about, just change a few things, just go out for a walk, pick a sport. Like, it doesn't have to be a heavy sport. We play table tennis in our office, just have a hit about, just move around. Those little things, I'm not even saying spend hours upon hours. Even if you do half an hour, even if you do 15 minutes, it's better than nothing. And the more, people start seeing the value of it, the more they start feeling good, the more you don't start humping when you're like going up the stairs and stuff. You're like, okay, that is actually good for me. It starts making you feel a bit better about yourself. And yeah, these are little changes that people can make. It doesn't even have to be major changes, but you need to know why you're doing something. What do you want to do?
So, keeping to the topic of workflow and things that are useful, what was the last really useful thing that you bought or acquired? What was your last kind of like shiny thing that you're like, oh, that was useful, I'm glad I got that?
See, that's a very hard question, because I don't buy many things. It's one of those things, like, for example, the shirt that I'm wearing at the moment, I bought it in 2015. I'm still wearing it. That's actually one of the more recent ones. It's one of those things as well. So I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, what is the last thing I bought? Okay, the laptop that I bought, actually, yeah. Because before this, I was using a Chromebook.
Okay.
And I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. I was quicker than that Chromebook. So it's one of those things where you're trying to do something and you're trying to move around and everything, and you have moved but the laptop. And I'm not just saying it from the aspect of the processes that it can do or how quickly it can do it. It's just how much mental power it takes away when you have to wait for something that you shouldn't have to wait. In this day and age, for example, in this day and age, if you have, like, for example, if you have a bad internet connection, that's stopping you from doing your work. In this day and age, if you have the same thing, if you have a phone which cannot capture, the information that you need to capture, for example, it's one of those things where it's not just about the process itself; it's the energy that it takes away from you from being productive or to do the best. So this laptop, which is now about a year old anyways, but still, I realized, for example, it opens with my face. So, even not having to put the password every time is very useful. As simple as that. Let's put it this way. So things like that, small things like that. It's the same thing. I get a phone every 2 years, not because I need a new phone every 2 years, not because I destroyed them. My iPhone 4 still works. It's just because the technology has moved to a point where it's better to have a new phone, because then it can process information better and I can do more things with it. And we are a digital business, the kind of speed that for example, even when I was an engineer, I needed computers which could compile, for example, if I write some code as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I'm just looking at the screen. It doesn't. We have talked a lot about, improving ourselves and everything. Let's put something about technology as well. The technology needs to match what you need to do. I'm not saying go and buy the shiniest thing or the newest thing and just buy the new iPhone every time it comes out. Just be sensible about what you need and where your processes are going, and match the equipment that you have with the processes that you need.
It's kind of about reducing friction, really. When you have, you want to have systems in place, whether that be your computer or your phone or notebooks and pens and so on and so forth, that work with you at the speed that your brain works. Yeah. And if you're waiting for your laptop to catch up, or if the way that your phone's set up means you can't get to the thing that you want to get to, or if you just you never have a pen that works and you pick up a pen and it's not working, then you're in that situation where actually you can't do the task, or you can't get the thing out of your head, or you can't do it at the point that your brain is ready to do it. Yeah. At which point you're just adding drag into the process. You're making things more frustrating and things. I mean, the one thing that whenever I have this conversation about friction, the one thing that I always wish I'd stuck to was learning to type properly. My typing's it's okay, but it's not good. And whenever I've worked with people who could touch type, I'm always just that's so cool. You can type faster than I can think. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's interesting because so when I was in school, I don't know if you had this in school as well. When I was in school, first of all, for the first few years, we did not have computers. I was born in 91, but what you have to realize is if you come from a third world country, things are a bit behind. They are always behind. So our 90s might have been your early 80s. Let's put it this way. Okay. So when I reached third grade in school, then we had computers for the first time. And the first thing they taught us is how to type.
Right.
For whatever reason, I don't know what was the mentality behind it. And I'm still thankful for it. The number of people I see who cannot type properly, or what they're using one finger and looking for, letters even now. That's the first thing they taught us. And at the time it was very annoying because I'm thinking, why do I have to remember A, C, F, G, semicolon, semicolon, whatever. At one point I memorized the whole keyboard. Now, you can have a keyboard which is, for you. If you use a button more and you want a button to be bigger and everything, you can do those things these days. So all my volume controls are here, and my calculator is in my keyboard and things like that. These are not standard on a keyboard, for example, but you can get these things these days. But the first thing they taught us was to type.
Yeah. And I can, and it's I think personally, I feel aggrieved every time I go back to a laptop, that it's not like my phone where I could just basically punch the vague side that I want, and it works out what I'm trying to say. So I get very frustrated when I go back to a laptop and I can't just flap my hands at it and have it work out what I'm trying to say, because that's how my phone works. So yeah, technology has not caught up with my incompetence from that side of things. It's very disappointing.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is that I think it's becoming more and more common to have Even computer companies will tell you, even people who work on productivity, they will tell you, if you go on a laptop, don't use the keyboard of the laptop.
Okay.
Because how close the screen is and how you type and how it's structured, it is not as effective. So what you are saying about the phone, it's more effective because the information is easier to look
okay.
at the same time. But if you're doing it on the laptop, it's not built in a way. It is just supposed to be taken somewhere and done some work with it. But it has become so common that even on our desks we have a laptop. So there's always a keyboard. I always have a keyboard. I always have a mouse. These are little things, and my laptop is always on a stand. So it is now at the moment it's not straight. It's like like this, and it's like this. So it's literally the screen is straight, and my keyboard is on an angle. So I can't use the keyboard anyways at that angle.
Okay. And it's in line with your eyes. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So things like that. These are the little things you can do these days. Yeah, a laptop was never built to be the way we use it these days. A laptop was a laptop. It was supposed to be a laptop. It was supposed to be, okay, you need something quicker, you need something to be carried with you, you have a laptop. But now you see it in offices, people use it on their desks and everything. It was not designed for that.
Yeah, that's since some USB-C and so on, it's a lot easier now to just like dock in monitor, Bluetooth keyboard, and just pull it out.
Exactly.
Much easier.
Yeah.
Right, Taz, we're into the home straight now. So I'd like you to complete the sentence. Do yourself a favor and...
Do yourself a favor. Okay. The first thing which came to my mind is, it's one of those things where people can, you can get absorbed in your own world. Let's put it this way. You can, what I have learned, and it's because of the circumstances, like I said, after the Spanish, my year in Spain, 6 months of not doing anything. Like literally, I had a job offer from, well, not a job offer, but I was considering an offer from the American embassy in Pakistan. That would have taken me on a diplomatic route in like completely different worlds. I was going to go and work in a piping company as an industrial manager. That would have taken me on a completely different route. I could have stayed in the university and become a lecturer like full time, do my research and just go on with life. I would have been a management philosophy guy. Let's put it this way. Again, very different worlds. But what I have realized is, if you overemphasize on something, if you overbuy into something, then you stop seeing the opportunities which are out there. And I see so many people who worry about things that they cannot change, or they will spend their times in things where they cannot add the value they can add because they think this is their world now, because they have thought so much about it that they cannot think outside. And this is one of my problems with the academic world. You will meet so many academics who are very smart people, but they have no idea how the real world works. They have no idea. They have lived in their world. They have lived in a structured environment where you do research, you go to the lab, you give a few lectures. They have no idea what's happening in the market. They can never find the information which is happening in the market. So don't overthink about the same thing. Try to, widen what you can do. Go and learn a few things. Go and talk to people. Look outside.
Thank you so much for coming on. Do yourself a favor. Where can people find you?
Yeah, it's my pleasure, by the way. Yeah, thanks for asking me on. I'm the most active on LinkedIn. I'm sure you know this as well. I'm on LinkedIn. If you just search my name, there are not many people with my name. So you can just put Taz, and Ahmad is Ahmad. Yeah, I'm sure there's no other Taz Ahmad on LinkedIn. So you will find me very easily and do connect with me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for listening. We will see you again soon. You've been listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. Brought to you by Make Work Work Better. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better. Our theme tune is by the Titanics. Talk to you again soon.